California has some of the strongest anti-gun laws in the nation. And so many of my clients get pulled over with a gun in the car. They were going hunting or fishing or whatever, camping, and they forgot to put the gun in a proper box. They forgot to put the gun in the trunk instead of in the cab of their truck. You can't put the gun in the back of the truck because somebody else can take it. So we want to defend your rights to possess your gun that you had. We want to make sure you don't lose your right to possess a gun for life, because most gun charges in California are actually felonies, which means if you're convicted, you lose your gun rights under federal law for life. I don't want to see that happen. So we'll do everything possible to either get your gun charge dismissed, or if we can't get it dismissed, reduced to a misdemeanor so that you can get your gun rights back in California. So in California and under federal law, if you have a prior felony conviction, you lose your gun rights for life. Sometimes we can get that back through a process called expungement. Sometimes we can get that back, your rights back, through a process called a pardon. Those are complicated. But what we want to do instead is try and avoid the conviction altogether in the first place, because that helps us get your gun rights back much quicker. So one of the issues we fight most often is what effect a gun charge has on the outcome of the case. Prior convictions for other gun charges dramatically affect the current case's outcome will be. For example, we have a crime in California called felon in possession of a firearm. If you had a robbery conviction, for example, when you were 18 years old because you were running out of a store with an 18 pack under your arm, and you bump into the clerk on the way out the door, you now have a robbery conviction. That was when you were 18. Now you're 40 years old, and you decided you want a gun. You got one under the bed because that's where you keep it. It's locked up in the safe. But somehow the police find out about it, and they come and they find the gun in your house. Now you're faced with a felon in possession of a firearm charge that is a 16-month, 2-year, or 3-year penalty, and it's doubled up because you got a strike for that stupid robbery charge you had when you were 18 years old. Those exact facts were a case I had in Ventura County a few years back. We got the guy no jail time. We got the guy probation. We got the guy not to go to prison, which was technically required by the law, because we showed that, hey, that was 22 years ago. He's led a good life since then. With prior convictions, you really need to contact Strongest Defense. You really need our help, because we want to make sure that your past doesn't affect your future. Armed robbery charges are very serious. Under California law, using a gun during a robbery is 10 years just to show the gun, 20 years if the gun is fired, and 25 years to life if the bullet that you fired out of the gun during a robbery actually strikes a person. When defending against these charges, it's very important to know one thing for certain: is the gun real? I had an example of an armed robbery where 3 people, one of them was my client, went into a jewelry store. The jewelry store had great video surveillance. So good that when my client told me, hey, Dave, the gun wasn't real, it was an airsoft gun, how could I prove that? And so we proved that by going frame by frame through each part of the video surveillance, and I found a part of the video surveillance where you could actually see underneath where a real gun would have a magazine, and we showed that that wasn't a magazine, it was actually the cap to the CO2 cartridge. In fact, the detail of the video was so good that we could read the writing on the slide of the supposed firearm. And the writing on the slide of the firearm, I brought the real airsoft gun into the DA's office. I said, look at 8 minutes and 38 seconds into the video surveillance. Look at frame 21 of that second of time, and you can read the serial number, and it matches this weapon, which is not a firearm. That made the difference of a decade of my client's life. Everyone else in the case got 13 to 15 years, and my client got 2. California's gun laws are actually in flux right now because there's a federal court case pending right now, which should be up to the Supreme Court hopefully within a year or a year and a half. The U.S. Supreme Court should strike down many of California's gun laws. However, in the meantime, there's basically 3 types of gun charges. There's machine guns, or guns that shoot automatically, and the penalties that come from that. There's assault weapons, which are defined by certain things like whether or not there's a folding stock, whether you can change out the magazine with a push of a button, or whether you have to unscrew something. And there's also just simple possession of things like handguns or long guns, which we call rifles. The penalties vary dramatically, and the defenses vary dramatically. The assault weapon can be a misdemeanor or it can be a felony. A misdemeanor charge might result in no jail time. A felony might result in jail time or even prison time. With machine guns, it's much more serious. Was it an actual machine gun, or is it something else that was a misfire? Most people don't know that a simple handgun can be modified, or the trigger can be worn down, and what was built to be a semi-automatic weapon is now fully automatic because of wear and tear. So we look into those things, whether it was manufactured to be an assault weapon, whether it was manufactured to be a machine gun, and we use these various things to help defend your rights and reduce your gun charges to the lowest possible level so we can get you out of custody or get you out of trouble as quick as we can. Listen, gun charges are, frankly, one of my favorite things to defend against. I have another lawyer working for me who spends his nights and days dreaming about gun cases, dreaming about the different kinds of weapons that he has. If you have any issue with a gun charge in California, any issue with the gun charge in Ventura County, you gotta give us a call at Strongest Defense. I don't think you'll find anyone else who's got 2 lawyers working together on the team to defend your rights, who care more about your right to bear arms than Strongest Defense.